Phyllis Nage writes like an absolute motherfucker. My name's Lucy Kirkwood. I'm the author of Maryland and Rapture, amongst other things, and I'm here at the Samuel French Bookshop at the Royal Court Theatre. So this is Phyllis Nage. I'm specifically going to talk about Disappeared. All of her plays should be read. I think she's one of the greatest writers to have worked in this theatre specifically, but in this country. Her plays are beautiful balls of energy that I think should be produced a lot more than they are. Disappeared specifically is about a young woman called Sarah, and you meet her in a scene in a bar in Hell's Kitchen in New York, and at the end of the first scene she disappears. It's sort of playing with genre convention, and it's a sort of mystery thriller about what's happened to this young woman, and has this very strange man she met that night done something terrible to her, but also it's just asking metaphysical, existential questions so brilliantly and deftly. It's really funny and it's really wild. There is so much dynamism and comedy and bleak sadness and sense of place to her writing that I recommend you read both the plays in this book and all of the others. The next one is In Arabia, We'd All Be Kings by Stephen Adly Gurgis. Again, it's set in Hell's Kitchen in New York. Not all of them are, but these two are. And it's set like in the 90s, during that period that Rudy Giuliani was mayor of New York, and he was undertaking what is referred to as the Disneyfication of New York. And it's set in this dive bar, and everyone in it is kind of struggling with being at the very bottom end of the socioeconomic chain, or addiction, or just the complete collapse of all of their dreams. And it's, again, a bit like Nage, it's got this like New York fury and energy and pace and hilarity to the writing, but it also, there's a scene in here that's a man sort of bargaining over what he will charge for a sexual favour, which is one of the most saddest, tender scenes I've ever read in the English language. And he's really brilliant at writing scenes which have such emotional truth and realism, but also contain metaphorical depths. And just watching, basically it's a scene about watching a man bargain for his soul in the middle of a neighbourhood that's gentrifying and becoming very clean and modern and antiseptic almost, while these people continue to try and live their really difficult lives. And it's just it makes, like, there are two places I laugh out loud on every page. And yeah, he's quite well known for some of his other plays, but this one is less produced here, and I really recommend it. Okay, I'm going to go to Howard Barker plays one. Howard Barker is quite simply one of the most important dramatists in the English language, and it is absolutely criminal that his work is not produced more. I want to highlight particularly two plays from this publication. One's Victory and one's Scenes from an Execution, and both of them are brilliant epics, and I think, like, to write one of the best plays in the English language of the 20th century is impressive, and to write two is sort of unforgivable. Killer Scenes from an Execution, that's a play that Barker himself has sort of distanced himself from. I think he feels that he calls it accessible in a way that I think he finds problematic. And I think the genius of it is that it sits in a political and moral complexity that very few plays do these days. I think it's something that an audience can find their way into. And I think that's a really rare talent, to be genuinely radical. I think that we have an increasingly conventional theatre, even in this building, which is brilliant, but I think that not just in terms of critics and audiences, but I think even as playwrights, sometimes the things we think are radical and challenging in our current climate are compared to what Barker is doing, are not. And I think he has a vital place in our ecology, and I think that it tries to be offensive and it tries to be problematic, and I think that is one of the most admirable qualities you can be striving for in theatre. I don't feel like theatre is a place where you should be making things easy. Victory is set in the aftermath of the restoration in this country. So yeah, Barker is writing about the aftermath of an enormously bloody period of English history, and refusing to give it any kind of simplistic treatment. And there are no baddies or goodies in this play. There are just people who were varying degrees of fucked by the circumstances around them. Scenes from an Execution is it's also set in the 16th century in Italy, and it's about a great artist called Galactia, who has been commissioned to paint an enormous painting to celebrate a recent military victory. And what she chooses to do instead is paint something that she thinks truly reflects the reality of war. It's a bit too easy to draw simple parallels with Barker's own relationship with the artistic establishments in this country, but they're there for the taking if you want them. The journey that the central character goes on, it's one of the ones that has disturbed me most out of any play I've ever read. The final scene of it is sort of devastating. The Victory and Scenes from an Execution are considered his more accessible plays, better or worse. And I'm hard selling them to you in the hope that it will make you go and read all the rest of his oeuvre, because what he does with the form is just unparalleled. Baron. So I just love this play. I saw it at the Almeida. It's Dance Nation by Claire Barron. And I think particularly because I'm a female writer and I get asked to write in certain subjects and talk about certain subjects a lot, I have a sort of weariness around sort of girl empowerment stories, and I often think they're politically inert. And but this is just the way she dramatises the power of a 13-year-old girls' dance troupe and their interiorities, coupled with how they are together as a sort of theatrical unit, is just, I think, absolutely virtuosic. And it's really moving, and it's really funny, and it manages what is, you know, nowadays quite a large cast really brilliantly, and with loads of proper theatrical devices, which I'm always really seduced by. If you're an actor, there's beautiful monologues in it. I think her writing of teenage girls is so truthful and resists any cliches in a way that I see a lot of other work kind of falling foul of. So yeah, it's really just a really beautiful play. I'm gonna do. So this is Love and Money by Dennis Kelly. I have got an enduring fondness for this one. What on the surface seems like quite disjointed scenes, you don't often revisit characters, but actually what they're all doing together is telling the same really awful, tragic story. So it's the story of a woman with a catastrophic, even fatal shopping addiction, and her partner, and sort of how they try and manage their way out of that. And that sounds very unforgiving and bleak, and it is, and it's really brutal about basically how capitalism worms its way into your head and is one of the hardest addictions to shift. So yeah, it's sort of like a love story gone wrong, and you meet the first scene is really devastating. It's meeting this woman's partner after she's passed away, and she's had taken her own life as a result of the shopping addiction that she has. But it just expands and refracts, and it's like a sort of prism, and you just get these little shards of light in different colours that are just looking at all the ways in which money and our attitudes to money sort of pervade all of the sort of really sacred, intimate parts of our life. That makes it sound like it's not funny, and it's really funny. I just think it's as a piece of formal construction, it's just like dazzling. Do you want to have a look? Blank by Alice Birch. Big fan of all of Alice's plays. This play was a commission for Clean Break, which is a company that works with women in the criminal justice system or leaving the criminal justice system or at risk of offending. The commission's in some ways quite broad, but it has to be about the topics that relate to being in the criminal justice system. And in some ways that sounds quite straightforward, but actually when I had that commission, what I found really hard was sort of decide, there's so many things. What do you write about? Like, because it's the way a woman ends up in prison is a very complicated, complex, sprawling map of unrelated issues that are related but distinct from each other. And Alice's brilliant bravura response to that is to write about all of them. Just experiencing the entire offering from Alice is a sort of overwhelming event. It's witty and unsentimental, such a brilliant piece of work. As I say, one of the few that I've offered that maybe it's like almost better to read it and see the whole thing. Of course you must see a production if there's one on near you. The whole thing is, as a theatrical object, fascinating. So this is The Glow by Ali McDowell that was on here recently. I think it's Victoria, it's 1863. And you see a sort of well-to-do middle-class woman who considers herself to be a clairvoyant, or is perhaps pretending to be a clairvoyant, go to an asylum and recruit/steal a young woman to sort of be her assistant. And what you realise is this young woman genuinely has some form of power to travel through time and to see other planes of reality. She's sort of like Pandora's box rather than Pandora, where she has to hold all of the horrors of the history of human civilization in her being. What I love about him is I think that he is really interested and respectful of genre, which is quite rare in the theatre. I thought that the audacity of his non-realism was really wonderful. It's really dazzling and tender and witty, and I think he is one of the writers working today who's trying to do something new with the form, and that is always really seductive to me. Thank you for listening to all of that, and I hope that for all my inarticulacy it's encouraged you to read some of these wonderful plays which are available from the Samuel French Bookshop at the Royal Court Theatre.
Beautiful. Right.